Hey, it's Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader, and welcome to the Black Belt Leadership Podcast, where each week I'm giving you tips, tools, insights, and resources to help you become a better version of who you are and what you do as you discover, develop, and deploy your own Black Belt leader within. Hey, this week I want to share a personal story and I want to talk about an opportunity to live your best life. Now, let me introduce you to Venom. I'm not talking about the Venom from the Marvel series. Venom is a 10-year-old black cat. And no, she doesn't shapeshift or she doesn't eat people like the Venom on the big screen. She doesn't have any superpowers and she's not from another planet seeking refuge on terra firma. But Venom's not your ordinary cat either. And that, as you may have guessed, leads me to this week's leadership lesson. Now, Venom had spent the last 3 to 4 years of her life living in a small enclosure in an animal shelter. This small space, very confined, was her life. Now, Venom had contracted feline immunodeficiency virus, FIV, think HIV for cats. This is a highly infectious disease that attacks a cat's immune system, similar to what AIDS does in humans, but it is unique to felines and it compromises the cat's ability to fight off even minor ailments. Now, the disease starts with few symptoms other than a reduced white blood cell count and sometimes increased protein levels. But as the disease progresses, the immune system begins to fail, and the cat may begin to develop chronic or recurring symptoms such as urinary or upper tract infections. Weight loss often follows. Now, as the disease progresses, weight loss begins to accelerate, along with seizures, behavioral changes, and neurological disorders. An FIV positive cat in the latter stages of this disease may struggle with balance, may have walking issues, and in the case of Venom, could lead to hearing loss and her ability to speak. Venom was essentially deaf and dumb. Now, because FIV is transmitted mostly through cat bites, felines who are FIV positive are often secluded from the general cat populace to avoid spreading the disease through fighting. There's no cure for FIV, and life expectancies can range from a few months up to 15 years if the disease doesn't progress to the latter stages. This is Venom's world. So, as a result of this diagnosis and all of the problems it brings with it, Venom had been sequestered from the other cats in the shelter. Her world consisted of this small cage enclosure and an occasional opportunity to come out of the cage for a few moments to stretch, to explore, and to play, which she stretched a little, explored a little, and played very little at all. Now, for the past 3 to 4 years, she had been essentially isolated, unwanted, and unloved. When people would come and visit the shelter, nobody wanted to play or pet Venom. Her cage was marked with an FIV warning, and when she did get out on occasion, the disease had spread to her nervous system so much that she staggered and stumbled when she walked. Plus, she was an older cat. So, who would want to rehome a sick, skinny, old cat who couldn't hear, couldn't speak, staggered when she walked, and wasn't that energetic, and her lifestyle was unknown? After a few short years, Venom even stopped caring. She stopped hoping for a better life and began to accept the fact that this small enclosure was going to be her home until she died, uncared for, unwanted, and unloved. And then enter my daughter, Jessie. Now, Jessie had learned about this shelter shortly after relocating to Missouri, and she stopped in for a visit. She, like me, is an animal lover. Now, not only did this shelter provide a very safe place for animals to live until they were adopted, it provided a forum for local people who loved animals to stop by, to visit, and to spend time interacting with and playing with the animals. Well, as Jessie was introducing herself to the staff and talking about the opportunity to come in and spend time with the animals, her eyes were drawn to this small, recluse, little black cat in a cage. Jessie was explained about Venom's FIV diagnosis, and then she says, "Do you mind if we get the cat out and let's see if she'll play with me?" Well, the staff opened the enclosure door and carefully removed Venom, this small little cat, from inside. And as Jessie took this cat in her arms, to the shelter's surprise, Venom reached up, put her paws around Jessie's body, and began to purr loudly. This was something she had never done before. Normally, when people would come in and try to interact with her, she was very lethargic and had no energy. But in this scenario, this cat clung on as if she was hanging on for dear life. As they tried to put the cat back in her enclosure, Venom would not let go. She kept clinging even more tightly to Jessie, enjoying the moment with someone who cared. Now, think about this. The cat that nobody wanted, the cat who had essentially given up on life, had responded to the smallest gesture of kindness in a surprising way. The shelter was so moved by this cat's response to Jessie, they waived the adoption fees and allowed Jessie to take Venom to her new home. Now, I got a call later that day from Jessie telling me she had adopted a cat, and then she told me the backstory I just shared with you. Now, I wasn't surprised that Jessie had adopted a cat. She'd had a cat for many years before she relocated from Arkansas to Missouri, and that cat had recently passed away of old age. But I was a bit surprised to hear that Jessie had chosen to adopt an older cat, and especially an older cat with an advanced form of FIV. But then again, I really wasn't surprised at what Jessie had done because, like her dad, she has a heart for animals. Now, Jessie chose to name her cat Venom. You guessed it, because this was her favorite Marvel character. Why? Because Venom was black all over with a touch of white around her face, long white whiskers. To Jessie, this was her Venom. Well, I popped into town the next day and stopped by to see my daughter and to meet the new cat and say hello to Venom. Now, Venom was a tiny cat, only 5 pounds. When I walked in to see her, here's what I can tell you. She was small, she was tiny, and I wasn't sure she was going to make it. She wasn't at all playful, and since Jessie had adopted her, Venom hadn't eaten anything and had barely taken in any water. I picked up the cat and I placed her in my lap and I began to pet and massage her, trying to help relax her and adjust her to her new surroundings. Now, my concern was that after 3 or 4 years in this enclosure, Jessie had adopted a cat that had a failure to thrive mentality, and this cat had essentially given up on life. Or the disease had so progressed to a point that this cat wasn't going to survive for very long. Venom's balance was unsteady, and every time she tried to walk, she staggered and often fell. She couldn't meow, but she could purr. And by the time I left, Venom had started purring when Jessie put her in her lap, and you could see that she was starting to relapse. Now, as I drove home the very next day, Jessie called to tell me that Venom had eaten a few morsels of cat food and was drinking water more consistently. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking maybe the cat's going to make it. That same night, Jessie let me know that Venom hopped up in her bed, curled right up next to her, and made herself at home. And in the days and weeks that followed, Venom's appetite returned, and she began to slowly explore her new surroundings. And to Jessie's surprise, Venom's balance improved. Her gait became more steady as she walked, and she started jumping up on the furniture and exploring her place more fully. Now, her favorite spot to sit was Jessie's office chair. And when Jessie was working in her home office, Venice would hop up and would sit right beside her and occasionally make her way up onto the desk to see what Jessie was working on. But when Jessie wasn't there, she owned that purple chair. Now, Jessie also had a sliding glass door that led out onto an upstairs deck, and this allowed Venom to have an opportunity to go out and explore the outside world, perhaps for the very first time, while still in a safe and secure environment. Venom went from being unwanted and unloved to living her very best life. Of course, Jessie bought her a cat house. She bought her toys. She bought her treats. And she loved this cat the way this cat had probably never been loved before. And there's a leadership lesson here if you haven't already figured it out. Here's the lesson. Life is full of people just like Venom who feel unwanted and unloved. People can be very hateful and very cruel in society today, and it leaves other people feeling hopeless, unwanted, unloved, with no purpose or no direction in their lives. Today, we essentially live in a throwaway society that discards people, treating them as if they don't exist for some of the most trivial, selfish, immature reasons that I've ever seen. We live in a cancel culture that cancels people for viable reasons that make no sense. Now, think about this. There's 24.1 million children in the United States who are going to go to sleep tonight without a dad in their home. Many of these kids feel abandoned and neglected. They often blame themselves for the fact that dad's not involved in their lives. It leads to low self esteem. It drives many of these children to turn to drugs, to alcohol, to unhealthy relationships, or destructive behaviors to dull the pain of the abandonment they feel. And of course, you all know that social media has become a cesspool of anger and hatred, as well as providing a forum for the needless bullying and humiliation of others. This is one of the reasons we see depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and suicide on the rise. Now, social media also allows deviant behaviors to be amplified and encouraged online. It leaves impressionable youth and young adults to act out in a crazed effort to gain attention and to seek a sense of belonging. Here's what you need to understand. People who feel unwanted, people who feel unloved, will often do anything to belong, even if the group they seek to impress is promoting a destructive lifestyle or an ideology that isn't based in reality. Now, others like Venom will simply withdraw into isolation. They shut themselves off from the rest of the world. Now, social isolation has its own problems as well. People who are chronically lonely have a 25% increased risk for significant health issues. And I'm not just talking about mental health issues like depression, anxiety, or suicide. What I'm talking about, people who are socially isolated have a significant increase in the propensity for heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and dementia. So, how do we help other people all around us feeling unloved and unwanted have the opportunity to live their best life possible? Claire Booth Lucy puts it well. She says there are no hopeless situations. There are only people who have grown hopeless about them. We as leaders, you and I as black belt leaders, have to, as Napoleon Bonaparte so aptly put it, be dealers in hope. You know, Jessie saw something in Venom, an opportunity to give a cat who had been rejected by society and abandoned, to give that cat an opportunity to experience her best life ever. And you and I, as black belt leaders, can do the very same thing. We simply have to be willing to be inconvenienced. There's people all around us who are stuck in enclosures of isolation of their own making, who are waiting for someone just like you to see something in them they don't yet see in themselves. Now, one of the lessons Jessie and I have heard early on, and many times from our mentor, Dr. John Maxwell, is this: people are valuable, therefore, value people. So when you and I see people as valuable, here's what happens: we treat them as valuable and we look for ways to add value to them. Now, Jessie did this with Venom. She saw a cat that was rejected, unwanted, and unloved, and she saw an opportunity to give a cat a chance at life nobody else was willing to do. And you and I can do that with other people when we see the opportunity to do good and we act on it. You know, maybe for you, it's volunteering in your local school so fatherless children can have a positive father figure role model in their lives. Or perhaps for you, it's giving someone who's disabled an opportunity to join your workforce and find a way they can meaningfully contribute to your organization. Or maybe for you, it's volunteering with the Salvation Army, a homeless shelter, it's Alcoholics Anonymous, or some other organization, and identifying individuals who are open to being mentored. They're going through a rough time and they need someone like you to help them see the value in themselves they don't yet see. And for the record, it may not be something you have to commit to for the rest of your life. Sadly, on Sunday, May the 26th, 2024, at 8:02 p.m., Venom departed this earth after 8 months of living in Jessie's home. It was a sad day for all of us. But as I look back over the pictures and the video that Jessie shared with us the entire time Venom was in her home, I can tell you this: Venom lived her best life ever in the short time that she lived in Jessie's house. This little cat left this earth knowing she was wanted, she was cared for, she was loved, and she was accepted. Now, there's people all around us wanting to feel the exact same way. They are waiting for someone just like you or I to reach out to them, to value them for who they are, and help them see who they can truly become. So here's my challenge to you. I want to encourage you to begin to look for these people and to be intentional in your search. And when you find these people, when you see them, reach out to them, encourage them, mentor them, empower them to rise to their full potential and to celebrate what happens as they begin to live their best life ever. I want to challenge you to be willing to be inconvenienced for a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, or a few months to help someone feel valued, appreciated, accepted, and wanted. Remember what Claire Booth Lucy said: there are no hopeless situations. There are only people who have grown hopeless about them. And don't forget John Maxwell's admonition: people are valuable, therefore value people. This is one of the most rewarding things you and I, as black belt leaders, can do. And this is why I do what I do each and every week, because I value you. I'm Dr. John Terry, the black belt leader. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.